Hello. Okay. Evan and Jesse. Okay. Hello. I'm gonna have to try and find a way to make entering class more interesting. Maybe I'll find some elevator music or something. Okay. So I do throw a cat. What's this? Do a cat sis. Okay. All right. Just now realizing I have a lot of extra functions as a prof, so I'm playing around with things today. All right, so it's officially 4:00. We will get started with those of you who are currently present. Again, just checking in. This is the end of week 2. This is the point in the semester where you're getting settled, figuring out how everything is going to play out for the winter term. Are there any major concerns, questions? You're still all good? Yes? Okay. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we had a couple of not new students, but students who presented themselves Tuesday and Thursday. So there is one new student, and I'm going to try and pronounce your name correctly, but Kemini, are you there? And did I pronounce that name anywhere close to how you pronounce it? Okay, check in maybe a little bit later. So that leads into something else. And for those of you who I see Beth, Jesse, and Maudie, and I know I've said in the past, I'm never going to force you to put your cameras on. But again, if you do choose to put your cameras on, just remember and be aware of your surroundings. So I know that I mute myself if my dog comes in because she's chatty. I don't have other people in my background. I'm not doing other things, but I get it. If you have to leave, if you have your camera on and you have to leave for whatever reason, just please be conscious of other people. So don't, if something in your background is distracting, there's features. I mean, you guys all have really plain, no offense, but like you all have very plain and not very exciting or busy backgrounds to begin with. So that's great. But like there are features in Zoom, just as a reminder, there are virtual backgrounds that you can place in case your background is distracting. So just keep that in mind if you do plan on putting your camera on. And for those of you who don't, that's fine, like I said, but I'm going to assume that you're there and I will call you out. And if you're there, I expect you to answer. If I call you out and you don't answer, then I'm going to consider that an absence. Okay, so I'll give everyone a couple chances. But like if we're participating or if I'm asking you questions, please at that point, I said that again. Open your mic, use your mic, speak, basically. Otherwise, just to make sure that everyone is there and that there aren't any questions, and a lot of you are comfortable doing that in the chat as well. Totally okay with that. Use what's familiar and with what you're comfortable with. Oh, connecting to audio. Can you hear me? Okay, anyways, so I will keep going with that. I think that was it. And the only other thing that I had like as a housekeeping note that I wrote as a reminder to myself is if you're sending me emails, give me like a day or two to kind of answer them. If it's something super pressing, I'm not going to take offense if you send me a second email, but give me about 2 days. If you're sending me an email and I haven't responded. So I know that a couple came in from you in my other group, I think yesterday or today. So I'll get to them by the end of the day tomorrow. And like I said, super pressing, let me know, or just let me know in Zoom at some point. Okay, those were my reminders for myself because I had to make myself a little list. Oh, no, I lied. So the last thing is, so I put the PowerPoint for this block for this week on D2L Tuesday. However, I made a ton of changes between Tuesday and tonight. So I will only put the PowerPoints on after tonight. So I'll make the update and put the newer version on D2L, but because based on the conversations that we have on Tuesdays, I kind of tweak as I go. So based on everything that came about on Tuesday, I added some things and I moved some stuff around. So the version that you have is going to have most of the same content, but because there's a high likelihood that I will make changes, I'll only put the updated and most recent version on Thursday nights. If I forget to do that, let me know. So expect the PowerPoint PDF versions on D2L Thursdays instead of any other time, just because I sat there and went, I can't keep track of everything that I changed between Tuesday and now. Okay. So no surprise, I told you what we were going to talk about on tonight, Thursday. We're going to just bookend values, goals, and time management. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at what I was planning on talking about. Are there any immediate questions that you have or things that you want to discuss that have to do with time management? Is there something that you're really curious about or something that you'd like to discuss? Now would be the time to let me know, so that if we're not going to, I'll make sure that it comes up as something to talk about. Whether or not you're looking for suggestions, if like I do things this way and I'd like to share, or if it's more of a, I don't know how to even begin to create a schedule. Anything along those lines, this is the time to kind of bring that up. And if you want to do so in the chat, go do that as well. But my goal tonight is for you to be able to create a schedule of some kind, a schedule, plan, whatever you'd like to call it, but something that's going to help you better manage your time. If that's something that you're struggling with, which we all struggle with it at certain points. And it kind of depends on what strategies you're using. And tonight it's more about giving you as many options as possible and you figuring out what works or what doesn't for you. And I'll kind of show you how I thought about it. I was like, I'll show you my Outlook, what it looks like and how I use it at work. Because I'm a super visual person. So I need pretty colors and I need everything to be categorized, but that doesn't work for everyone. So I just want to show you an example. And if anyone else has examples, please feel free to share. But it's really just about here are all the different ways that you can go about managing your time. Try and pick what works for you and don't be afraid to try some stuff out. So that's the goal for tonight. And like I said, if there's anything you want to go through, let me know. Okay. Let's see if I could do the share screen correctly twice in 2 days. Jinx myself. This one. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to very briefly go over this piece one more time. Just in case there were any lingering questions, and I kind of added a couple more pieces that I thought might be useful to you as examples in case what I did and what I showed wasn't clear. So I added some to the PowerPoint, some examples specifically for SMART goals. So if we go back to this acronym, was it clear what every single step entailed for you? Do you have any questions about this? So the fact that, again, we had a really good discussion afterwards about the need for SMART goals and the fact that this is one way of doing it, but trying to make your goals as specific and measurable in all the pieces as possible, but that it's not the only way to do it. So keeping that in mind, sorry, I shouldn't have showed that slide first. I found some examples and here's the site here. I appreciated that these examples, one is for a entry-level accountant, so a more of a professional, well, they're both professional examples, but one is I'm currently in this job and one is a recent grad. So I want to complete my chartered professional accountant certification, become a CPA and advance to partner at a firm within 6 years. So that the website that I found did a really good job of breaking it down for you. So if it still was a little bit, not blurry, but a little bit kind of unclear as to what each piece of a SMART goal would look like, this is 2 more examples that broke it down for us into all 5 elements. So that's one example. So the fact that the job titles specifically are mentioned, that's one way of giving a little bit more detail to a goal. The fact that you need to become a CPA, there's certification, and I guess certification is another word for test. You have to be successful to be able to obtain a CPA. And then achievable is the fact that, okay, like they're logical steps and you have to do one before you can get to the next step, next level. And the fact that it's an accountant, entry-level accountant, and they're just trying to further develop their skill set for that particular job or field. So that's why it's more achievable. Like it's not just some random person who doesn't already work in the field in that particular profession. And then time-based, the goal of 6 years. So I found 2 examples. Hopefully that clears up any lingering issues if there were any. If not, I didn't think it hurt to have 2 more examples of SMART goals. So entry-level accountant, the italics is the goal, and then the recent grad one. So it breaks it down for you again into all 5 pieces. So securing 5 job interviews before my graduation, and then they put the date in. And then how are you going to complete that? By applying to and following up on 3 job openings. And then they put every day. So there's a lot of pieces in there, but altogether it's an example of a SMART goal. So the breakdown is there for you. In case you needed some more examples, because I know that that's part of your learning portfolio and just something that I encourage you to at least try. Maybe this particular exercise doesn't work best for you, but it could. Yeah, go for it.
When I was doing the example for today and practicing, I found that I had a ton of I will do it by. If I have too many, should I then just maybe look at having more than one, like breaking it into more than one goal? Or do I just continue to list them?
So it's going to depend on, like, are they all part of a bigger priority or a bigger goal? Because then you're going to have steps towards something bigger, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, it was around organization or completing something, and then I would have to do this many steps, I thought.
Yeah, so for some people, like the smaller the steps, the easier it is for you to continue on. Some people will choose like, oh, okay, these are similar, or they're like they fall into the same thing. I will group these together. But I am someone who likes a very detailed list. Still, I'll always under like a bigger goal, but I'm the type of person, my personality is also that I'll have a ton of goals, maybe 3 at the same time, but that are all part of, like you said, organization. Like I want to try an agenda and I want to do this and that. So there's nothing wrong with that, but what works for you might not work for someone else.
Okay.
But
thank you.
It's a really good exercise to even just get into the habit of what does work for me. So is it the fact that my goals are higher level? Is that what works best for me? Or do I have to go into more of like the minutia of like a daily task? Sometimes I even break up, like professionally, I'll break things up to like, this is what I need to get done before lunch. This is what I need to get done after lunch. And then another person would have just been, these are my goals for today. Emmanuel, you have a question? Okay. So yeah, it's really going to depend, but there's nothing wrong with the way that you've gone about doing it, Beth. Whatever works. So just 2 more examples to give you a better idea in case that still wasn't super clear. Hopefully that helps when it comes to your homework. So I did add this slide. I told you I would, and I forgot already, of like the link to the learning portfolio activity. So I just kind of reiterated what's in the criteria for the learning portfolio. So the fact that it's to create 7 goals. So 5 short-term and 2 long-term. So normally, I mean, you don't have to do it this way, but what's going to facilitate things for you is if you have, okay, I have 2 long-term goals, and what are the little pieces to get to each of those? So your short-term goals should be linked to one of your long-term goals. Is that more clear, less clear, or is that okay? So this is the 3 slides that I've just talked about are all new, because I just felt like I maybe needed a little more information for you, especially for those who I knew were already working on goals for the portfolio. All right. Okay. So now going into the final piece of time. So for some of you, you're following along with the old PowerPoint. But the first piece before we even get to that final step of a schedule is you need to be conscious of how you manage your own time. So these are 4 questions that you can ask yourself, and whether or not you can immediately answer tells you and tells me how aware you are right now currently to how you spend your time. So we realize that it might be a little bit easier to answer how many hours of class you have every day. I think it's Luis, or is it Madi? One of you has only 1 class. So some of you literally might only have 1.5 or 3 hours of class time per day. So that's relatively easy, especially in the winter term. But if I were to ask you, and we're still like early enough in the semester that these might still be things that you can determine along the way, but how much time do you spend doing homework or assignments or readings every week? So like your academic tasks, how much time do you spend with friends every week, which I get right now, we're in a pandemic and that's like a 0 for a lot of people, and that's okay. But if you're like me, the time I lost with my friends is the time I'm on social media more, or whatever the case may be. So it's a question of, do you know where your time goes in a given day, in a given week? If you do, great. But not very many people could, down to like the hour or the minute, tell me where all their time goes. Because you're going to fall into, good for you if you can plan every minute and very accurately estimate how long it takes you to do things and how much time you have in your week for each activity. For the most part, you're going to fall into one of 2 categories. You're going to underestimate everything, and then that's where you end up with not enough time in your week. Or what I recommend students to do is there is no harm in overestimating how long it will take you to do something. Because then at the end, you have like this surplus or extra time potentially, versus you're getting to the end of your day or your week and you don't have any hours left. So whenever you can, I always highly encourage students, especially at the beginning, to overestimate. So tack on a half hour, tack on an hour to what you thought it would take you, so that when you have a schedule or whatever, or a plan in place, you're like, oh, okay, it took me exactly the right amount of time, great, but most of the time it's going to take you a little bit longer than you thought. So this is just kind of make you aware. I don't know, does anybody have more than 3 hours of class per day? Jessie, you're in what, 2 classes per day? Oh no, she's going to go and tell me she has them all in one day.
One day. All of them in one day. So I've got women's studies from 11:30 till 1. Then I've got a lecture for communications. Then I've got this class on Tuesday. Then I have one from 7 till 9:30. And then I have like one on Friday and this Thursday.
Yeah, there's always one every year. There's always one who goes and mess up like the norm. I just knew you were going to say that because my brother is the same way. He's in college, and all of his they put all his virtual learning on one day. Like, that's not any better. So in university, depending on your program, you can put aside minimum 3 hours is the actual class time, whether it's online like us, remote learning, or online where you have like a -12. The minimum amount of time that you should be putting aside for each course should be at least 3 hours, whether or not you're sitting in class. Poor Jessie has like 9, however many hours that adds up to in one day. So your class time every week is 3 hours. So I used to call that butt in seat time because we used to see each other in person. So that's where you should be. So you have minimum 15 hours of class time per week, if that's a full time, if you're not in an overload and you're taking a full schedule. That's 5 courses times 3 hours a week, 15 hours a week. That's an arts program. Then you've got students, I know architecture, your schedule's all out of whack. Anyone who's in a science program, you also have to account for your labs, tutorials. I realize it's a pandemic. But you're looking at, I think we calculated it at like minimum 27 hours potentially of class time. And this is class time I'm talking about, not homework, not studying, not prepping for class. This is not one-on-one, but interactions with the professor. If all of your classes were online, were in person, that would be the minimum time that you're putting aside every week just for class time, not including studying. So that's something to be really aware of, especially if right now in the winter term, you're taking a reduced course load, you're trying out 1 or 2 courses. That's something to keep in mind in the spring term, and then eventually in the fall term. If you're starting out with a full course load, it's 3 hours of class time per week per course, not including labs and tutorials or whatever else comes about in like I know nursing has a weird schedule, architecture, there's all kinds of engineering. There's all kinds of asterisks where there's more than that, but that's about average. So keeping in mind all of that, and for some students, not having the surprise of that is going to help you when it comes time to managing your schedules. So apart from Jessie, I think a lot of you are probably at 2 or 3 courses, whether or not they're remote or not, 2 or 3 courses in your schedule. So that's probably about, you're looking at 9 hours of class time-ish. So that's something to keep in mind, not including everything else that goes on in your day. So just take like a check of all that first. And then after that, when I talk about identify your preferences and assess your needs. So your energy patterns, I didn't know how else to say that. So those of you who identify as morning people versus those of you who identify as like night owls, or maybe afternoon is your peak moment. When are you most productive? When are you most motivated? What time of day works best for you to get either your most difficult task or your most time-consuming task? That's something that you should be aware of. Like I have morning meetings all the time with my colleagues. They always tell me I'm super tired. I hate mornings. Like I'm not fully functional until about 10 a.m. That's just me. So I'm not going to ever, I mean, sometimes you do not have a choice, but I'm never going to plan for, or my first pick is never going to be anything before 10 a.m. If I could work like 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., that would be like my ideal day, because I'm most productive afternoons, evenings. I know that about myself. So if you're able to identify that that's how you work best, then try and plan your week and your tasks as much as you're able to do so. Plan that in your energy time, like your on peak hours. So that's something else to take into account when you're trying to figure out how to manage time. Notice your on time percentage. So other things to consider is how long it takes you to do things, like I've already said, and how long can you concentrate without your mind wandering. So if I weren't the one teaching, I would be probably like most of you with like 17 tabs open at the same time. So how long can you actually listen to someone, or how long can you read something before your mind wanders, before you YouTube something, before you have to, open a tab just to change like change your ideas. That's not the expression in English, but we'll go with that. So kind of figure out what's possible for you. I know that personally, I have a dog who's on a really tight schedule, so she keeps me on target all day, and you might have kids or other things, but for me, I'm about 1 hour. I can like fully focus and concentrate before like my mind wanders. I have to get up and stretch. So how much time or attention can you put aside in a row consecutively to accomplish a task? Now, I say that, but the task might also affect your on-time concentration. Like answering an email to me is the most boring thing on the planet. So that could take me legitimately a whole day of having the draft open, because I hate doing that. So my mind wanders and I'm all over the place because I just can't focus enough. I know it will take me 2 minutes if I just sit there and do it, but I hate doing them. So to me, that's something that I know about myself. to keep track of. So I have colleagues who are like, yeah, we'll just do the emails all in the morning and then I'm good to go for the day. And I leave them until the absolute last minute. So there's a lot of different factors that could play into what's working and what's not working. So all of those things to say, if you're not sure, and I'll mention it on another slide, just start keeping track of these things if you're not sure. And I'll give you different strategies for doing that. But all of this plays into whether or not your schedule works for you or not. And also the fact that you need to be checking in with yourself really frequently. So if big blocks of time don't work or whatever strategies you're trying out, don't be afraid to kind of be like, no, that didn't work. I need to try something else. So assess your needs, assess them often. If you're trying a new schedule for the first time about now, I think give it about 2 weeks, reassess what's working, what doesn't, and then try new things. So the goal is to create a habit of a schedule, a plan, an agenda, whatever you're going to call it, but you can't stick to something that's not working for you. So all of these are considerations to make and to test out with whatever method of time management you're going to try for yourself. Any questions about that? No? So this should be like common sense or things that you might consider but not realize why you were considering them. So just keep all of this in mind. Cat, sis, toi, how many are you? Toi, sis, neuf, douze, douze. We can do, I'm going to skip it for tonight. I had something and I'm going to skip it. So I'm just going to not share. Okay. Share. Lost my Zoom. Sorry, you guys ended up on my third screen and I totally lost you. All right. So for this is something else. I just stumbled upon it and I thought it was super cute. Again, strategies, recommendations, none of this is mandatory. This is a link to a list of time management worksheets and different strategies that you can use. So feel free to click on it and check these out if you want. But basically the link between the last slide and this one, which is why I'm going to delete the one that I had in between, is on one extreme, you can keep a time log. So whether or not you're doing this electronically in some kind of app, or like me, I'm super old school and I like to do things on paper, keep track of everything that you do in a day or two. So the fact that if I were to ask you, oh, well, how long does it take you to write an essay? You're like, yeah, I can do that in 2 hours. And then you track your time and it's like, shoot, that actually took me 6 hours. So it's whether or not you want to start and stop your like a clock or an app, like I said, keep track of all the things that you do. And again, this is one of many strategies that you could try, especially if you're unaware of how long it takes you to do things. So keep track of it in a time log of some sort. This is like by 15-minute chunk. It could be by hour. It could be as detailed or not as you want, so that you get a sense of how long it actually takes you to accomplish things. So for me, this is where I just wanted to give you one version of something that you can try. So I do it as I go, but I also do it at the end of a day or at the end of the week. And again, this goes back to me being a super visual person. So what I've started doing at work, to give you an example of what it looks like, is this. Oh gosh, sorry. You still see my calendar, right? Even though I moved it to God knows where. Okay, so this is what I started doing at work. So I started putting the blocks of all the different types of tasks. So I have a course to develop. I split it up into all of the pieces that I need to be done to complete this particular course. And I broke it into pieces so that I'm able to track, okay, the teacher's guide, this particular task, it took me 3 hours to do it. Is that what I thought? For me, it was less a concern of like, was I accurate and did I guess correctly? It's more of a look at, if anyone were to come and ask me, How long does it take you to do this? It took me 3 hours to work on that. So I've been slowly keeping track of everything that I do, not including my meetings, my like projects, so that I can get a good idea of how long certain things take me. So this is my way of keeping track. And I mean, I know it goes a little bit beyond time management because it's a lot more project management, but I wanted to get an accurate picture of how long each piece in my bigger project, how long each piece takes. So for me, I know that the back end of a course takes me probably about 3-4 hours, depending on if I was interrupted or not. So that's my way of a time log, of an activity log for me to keep track of everything that I'm getting done at the office on a daily basis. So I'm keeping track of it, and everything has a color coded category. But to me, that's my way of doing it. And it was just a personal choice that I made because I wasn't sure how long things took me. And like when someone asked me, okay, well, how long is it going to take you to do this? I'm not sure. So I'm starting to track it that way so that I can give more accurate estimations as to how long it's going to take to do something. So that's one way of doing it. And that's how I'm doing it in my Outlook work calendar. So you don't have to do that by any means in your own personal life, but that's one way that I've found for me is helping to keep track of things. And like I said, it goes beyond just time management. There's like an accountability piece, and it helps me stay on track in my own daily work. All right. So time activity log, go for it. This was a cute little circle where if you wanted to get all like grade school, and you can color in all the little wheels because every pie piece is 1 hour. So there's 24 pie pieces. So in your 24-hour day, where does all that time go? So that's another example of an activity that you could do if you wanted. And then, like I said, that link to a bunch more resources. So here, in case you really weren't sure where everything went, and I know that the PowerPoint that I had was more like a guessing game, this is 6 years old now, in 2021. But it was a day in the life of a university or college student. This was US. I couldn't find a Canadian equivalent. But this gives you an idea of the average student from 2011 to 2015. This is where their day went. So not that you need to compare yourself necessarily, but it gives you a good indication of, geez, I wish I could get to 8.8 hours of sleep. That's when we're talking about dreams, that's my dream, is to get to 8 hours of sleep. So it just kind of gives you an idea. Like grooming is showering, getting ready in the morning, those things. Right now, it's not part of our reality, but traveling, I had students taking the bus and not accounting for the fact that it took them 2 hours of bus time every day to get to and from campus. That plays into it. Traveling could mean dropping off and picking up the kids. How much time does that take out of your week or your day? So all of these pieces should play into your management, your time management. Any questions so far? Anything that like stuck out as, oh yeah, or no, I don't agree? No? Okay. No, it broke. What happened? Doesn't want to go forward on any of the slides. That works just fine. So the next one was another indication. It was what, social media or all media, I think. Major media. So another, I guess, a census that they did or a survey that they did. Again, just to kind of give you a sense of this is where other people's time goes. I'm not sharing it. Jeez. I assume you guys are following along. I lost everything. Oh, back in business. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I show them because this is a tweaked slide. back in business. So for this one, who you are as a time manager. So I don't remember how it looked before. So timetables, like a schedule with your course times. That's one way of doing it. Planners, agendas, again, old school or by paper or virtual. There's a slide, I think the next slide or one after that, all the different types of apps that exist that you may already be using to track your time and to manage your time is another option. And then I found like you can literally Google time management and there's tons of stuff all over the place. So I tried to direct you in a few different directions that I thought were super useful. So this is an online course that you can follow along, specific to online time management and online learning. So that's a resource that you can consult. Productivity is under, I don't know if you've already heard of him, but I really like College Info Geek. So he has a website, a podcast, a YouTube channel. I really like the resources that he creates. So he has a whole section on, he put it all under productivity, but it's like there's a whole chunk on time management. So he has tons of resources. I recommend him in general, but I think he started off way back when with time management as one of his main areas of like research. So I would recommend checking him out. There's all kinds of stuff, not all academic, obviously, but a lot of the resources that he has, I like. So he's another resource to check out. And then this was, can't remember what university, but like if it already exists elsewhere, I'm not going to go create it for you. I'm going to show you where it already exists. So this is a beautiful like organization, and it's like a whole bunch of resources for you. Tools. A lot of students always ask about like an assignment calculator that exists. There's weekly schedules, videos. So 3 of countless resources that exist. But I felt like I could highlight these 3 because I personally think they'd be super useful. And like will speak to a wide audience. So that's another slide that was new. And then these apps, honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't check it again this year before I showed it to you, but they should link to all of the app pages. And then unless something has changed between last year and this year, these are the only 2, the ones with the asterisks that have a cost to them. The rest of them all are only free or have free options for you when it comes to these apps. So I tried to categorize them into like, if you want to track your time. So if it's an activity or time log of some kind, those would be apps for you. If you're looking for some kind of to-do list, which is not technically, a to-do list is a great time management strategy to help you with focus, and then just general project or task management. So all of those are options. I don't know if any of you use other things. We switched to Teams this year at work, and I love it. It manages our time. Like I have my calendar in there. I have all of our teams in there. It's wonderful. I know that there's the Google something equivalent, but we have Microsoft at what I have. And Teams to me is just such a powerful tool. We haven't even figured out everything that it does, but it's something else you could consider, or whatever else you already use. Beth, you're nodding like you use Teams as well. Yeah, it's a great tool, and it gives you access to the whole. I mean, you would have access to the Microsoft Suite or Microsoft 365 anyway, so it's just awesome. Okay, so next is, and I know you already have the answers, but this is something else to consider, is the difference between a fixed and flexible activity. Again, I know that it feels like I'm off course, but everything is leading into this creating of a schedule of some kind. So when you're putting activities or tasks in your agenda, in your time, in your schedule, you have to ask yourself if it's a fixed or flexible activity. So I tried to categorize them for you based on what's most common. But for every person, this is going to be slightly different, especially when it's like some of them could be either or. So a fixed activity is something that you cannot change. So it is something that there's no negotiation possible. This is your class time. These are your labs. This is your job. Like I said, kid pickup, things that you're like, nah, I don't feel like it today. those aren't options. So they're fixed activities. Doctor's appointments, all of those things would would fall under a fixed activity. And then a flexible activity are things that maybe aren't recurring, or like, this week I'm going to do my laundry on a Saturday, and next week I'm going to do it, or I'm going to do it next time when I run out of clothes. Like, it could just be whenever. So some can choose to schedule tasks and activities and they can become fixed. But there is a distinction, because that's how you're going to prioritize. If it's a flexible activity, like, oh, I want to hang out with my friend, but I have an assignment due. Well, one should clearly come before the other. So this is another way of helping you to figure out what's more important. So this is, for the most part, what's going to appeal to the most and be the most common for the biggest number of you. But things like, and I want to stop on these, the fact that if volunteering is a requirement of your program, while that bumps it up a little bit more to just volunteering because you're a good person and you want to volunteer, not that you're not a good person in the other instance, but the fact that it's a requirement will dictate the fact that it's fixed versus flexible. The same thing for religious and cultural events in your life. For some people, religion is a big part of their identity and who they are as a person. So those are going to be fixed activities. So whether you're going to mosque or whether you have mass, those are things that are recurring in your life and that are important to you. So they would potentially be fixed for some people, and other people not as important. The same thing for family. Maybe you live alone and you don't have any family nearby. So maybe to you, the social aspect becomes more important. So that's why some of these fall into flexible. The same thing for sports. It's there twice, because there is a distinction between a varsity sport where you are a student athlete representing the university versus Zumba. I don't know. That's the first thing that came to mind. It's not that it's not important, and it's not that it doesn't have a place in your schedule. It's just, you shouldn't be scheduling Zumba over your class times, for example. So just keep in mind what's most important to you. So that's why a lot of them are there twice, because it's going to depend on you. So just be aware of all the different types of activities that happen, that occur in a particular day or week, and figure out where they fall in that list of priorities. And sometimes the distinction or the comparison fixed flexible helps some students figure that out. Any questions about fixed or flexible activities? Okay. All right. So the next concept under time management would be the Pomodoro Technique. I don't know if any of you have already heard of it. And if some of you speak Italian, I believe Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, I think. Anyways, that's besides the point. So the Pomodoro Technique, you don't have to watch, we're not going to watch the video. Basically, it boils down to the fact that whatever task you have in front of you should be divided into pieces, into smaller parts. So the Pomodoro Technique recommends that you should be scheduling 25-minute chunks of time where you're doing something. And then after every 25 minutes, according to the Pomodoro, it's 25 minutes on task, whatever that task is, and then a 5-minute break. And then you would just repeat that cycle over and over again when you're trying to plan your day or your week. So when I used to work with students about creating a schedule, so let's say you have 3 hours of in-class time and you need to study they say it should be a 1-to-3 ratio, which is just ridiculous because nobody has that much time in their week. So I told students to at least have a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have 3 hours of class time, you should be able to put at least 3 hours of study, review, homework time. So it would be a 6-hour commitment, 3 hours in class, and 3 hours of studying. But you shouldn't be on task for 3 hours straight without a break. So the Pomodoro Technique is to break up that 3 hours into 25 plus 5, 25 plus 5, 25 plus 5, until you hit your 3-hour mark. So that's basically what the Pomodoro Technique says. And I absolutely believe in the fact that you should be dividing bigger tasks or bigger chunks of time into smaller, more manageable chunks. That's a strategy that I'm going to repeat throughout the whole term because it applies to pretty much everything that you do. Okay, I have a 6-page essay to write. How do you break that down? Well, you can write the intro. Then you can break it into maybe your 3 arguments. Then you can have your conclusion. Then you have your works cited. So anything, almost anything could be divided into smaller tasks, smaller steps. So that's what the technique is telling you with your time. Break your time up into smaller pieces. So the scenario that I shared was a lot of students are like, okay, I have 4 hours of homework to do. What's the most effective way to break up that 4-hour chunk? So the 4 hour, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it's going to be less effective because your brain kind of just stops retaining information after a certain amount of time. And the Pomodoro technique or any kind of technique where you're breaking it into smaller pieces is kind of trying to counter that. That break gives your brain a chance to like catch up, and it gives you a chance to retain things, to be able to keep retaining new information. So the difference between Leslie, Leanne, and Nora on the screen is this: it's all 4 hours. It's just what's going to be most effective to you. So whenever possible, avoid giant chunks of hours at a time. And whenever you can, do a half hour. For some students, when I worked with them, they would tell me that, well, half hour is not enough time to get anything done. Okay, that's fine. So then apply the concept. It's called distributed practice is the concept. We'll then apply that, but in bigger chunks of time. Okay, so that goes back to, okay, I can hold my attention for 45 minutes. Perfect. Then let's do 45-minute chunks. 45 minutes, take a break. 45 minutes, take a break. 45 minutes, take a break. And then I tell students, past 3 or 4 hours, you're done. You're not necessarily for the day, but you should have a much longer break after you hit 2, 3, 4 hours of that cycle. Go do something non-academic for a little bit. Give yourself a break and then come back to it if you have the time in the day. If not, do it another day. So the same thing would apply to a week. So if I'm telling you you should have 6 hours of time set aside for each class, well, nobody says you have to put the 6 hours in one day. You could break that up into 3 hours of 2 days, 3 days of 2 hours each. So it's just the concept of distributed practice. Make it work for you. So 30-minute chunks, 45-minute chunks. Every hour you take a break. Those are things that we get told even at Budaya. They're like, get up and stretch. So whatever it is that you have to do, build those breaks consistently into that chunk of time that you're setting aside for studying, reviewing, homework, whatever it is. Questions about that? I think that's pretty straightforward, and most of you might already do it, but it's just like a reminder of there should never be giant blocks of time like that put aside in your schedule, obviously, unless you have a 3-hour class, which is why I don't agree with 3-hour classes. But anyways, I'm not in charge of timetables. So these were just examples of ways to do it. You can keep track and schedule your priorities based on the month. So obviously I look at my month view when I'm trying to figure out when all my appointments are, but I'll look at more of a daily view when I was a student. So the example on the right is very overwhelming for certain students. And they're like, I don't want that much scheduling, and that's okay. But for some people, they need it to be this specific, at least until you're creating the habit of prioritizing not just the class itself. They have like group study meetings. There's like lectures and then study times. Don't forget your part-time job. They had soccer. So they're including personal and academics into one schedule so that you can kind of keep track of everything. So again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But if you're not sure, I'd say start with the super intense example and then work your way backwards if this becomes too much. So I had students who not refused, but when I told them, okay, put aside, your 3 hours for your English course. While some students would identify that chunk of time in their schedule specifically for English, whereas other students would just put study. It's 3 hours of study. Whatever I want to do in that chunk of time, I'm going to do in that chunk of time. So it's up to you how much you want to like tag your blocks into general study time, or specifically, no, I have to do all of my readings for English. So I'm going to schedule English readings in my schedule so that they're there. And then others are like, nope, I'm just going to put generic study blocks all over the place. Whatever I need to do, maybe you have a to-do list and you're like, yeah, today's priorities are this. I'm going to do that in this block. It's up to you how you want to proceed. They're both options. Okay. So how can you schedule and prioritize your time? Other options, other things to consider, I should say. I just went straight through. So I recommend this. I'm not saying you have to do it, but you have to use something. I mean, unless you have a perfect memory and you've never been late for, or submitted something not on time, you're going to forget something, whether it's personal or professional or academic. You have to be using something. Even just using a calendar on your phone, you are managing some of your time. It's whether or not you should be combining, say, your school calendar and your work calendar. I was one of those people who people kept asking me, are you available? And I had to download the app for my Outlook because I kept telling people things, availability that I didn't have. So because I'm using two different systems and they don't talk to each other, or I refuse to get them to talk to each other, I need to be aware that I have multiple apps on the go and I have to check every single one before I can say, yes, I'm free. So it's sometimes people need to centralize everything, hence a schedule like this where all of your tasks and all of your activities are in there, and others are just like, no, I got this. I can do a random to-do list. I had students that swore by they could list out and recite their entire schedule every single day, and they were always wrong. So just keep in mind what works for you and try things out. All right, so for priorities, we kind of talked about that in line with your values and your goals. But when you're trying to figure out how to prioritize, like a quiz versus a quiz that's worth 5%, but an essay that's worth 20%, that might end up being a little bit easier to manage. Obviously, I'm going to put more time and effort into a 20%, an essay that's worth 20% versus a little quiz that's worth 5%, easy peasy. But other things might play into that. Whether or not you're struggling, or what are your grades, or what's the importance of that English course versus, let's say, it's a quiz in math. So you have to be able to kind of figure out how to prioritize things. So some students will tackle the most difficult task first. So that's one way of establishing priorities. You have a list of things to do, or you're trying to figure out, should I put more time aside for X versus Y? That's one way that students prioritize things, is the most difficult task. So the most difficult task could be in line at the beginning when I was talking about you're on your peak hours. So I always put my most difficult tasks in the afternoon because I know that I'm more alert, I'm more focused. So that's where those tasks go. Whereas I put like the super straightforward and really easy things, or my meetings, I try and put them in the morning because I know I'm not fully ready. So that's one way of doing it. Excuse me. The other way that some students will go about doing it is the thing that is going to take you more time will be prioritized over something that will only take you a few minutes or maybe a half hour. So going back to knowing how long it takes you to do everything and having that log prepped so that I know, okay, if I have this task, I know it takes me about 3 hours, but I know that an email technically only takes me a few minutes. So that's another way of prioritizing things. It could be by your most difficult tasks first, but it could also be the fact that I need more time. So obviously more time has to be set aside for that versus a smaller or a task that takes you less time can fit into maybe little breaks in your schedule. And then the last thing, for this slide anyways, about priorities is being able to say no. So if you have a good idea of where your time already is, where all of your priorities are, you're more able, and I don't want to say willing, but you should be able to look at everything and be like, actually, no, I can't do it today. Can we do this next week? So even my boss, she trusts that we have an awareness of our time. When she gives me a project and she asks me, Miranda, do you have the time for this? And I can tell her honestly, you saw how I was tracking things. No, I can't fit that into this week. Because most people, or generally, we want to just say yes and we want to help everyone and we want to be able to do everything. But establishing priorities, it also includes your ability to say no, or your ability to say not right now. So there's like an outright no, I can't do this ever. Or it's like, yes, I can do this, I'll be able to start it next week. So those are other factors that play into what's a priority. I don't know who's seen this before, if anyone has, but another way to check your priorities is it's called the Eisenhower matrix. So it's 2 questions that you have a task in front of you. You can ask yourself, is it urgent? Is it important? So if you're able to say yes to both, it's part of this first, they're calling them quadrants. This is your first priority. So if it's something that is super urgent and has a really tight deadline, and it's really important because there's funding attached to the project. Sorry, I'm taking a professional example, but so that's something that I have to do before all these other things. Whereas, okay, it's important, it's part of my tasks, but it's, we can push it back till February. Well, then obviously it becomes less important than something that has a tighter deadline. So if you're answering yes to both questions, urgent and important, it becomes priority 1. And then if it's important, so in line with your goals, in line with your project management, in line with your courses, but it doesn't have a strict deadline, then it would be a second priority. And then, so then if you're able to say, no, it's not urgent, no, it's not important, but it is urgent. Okay, well, am I the one who has to do it? If it is not in line with my goals, it's not part of my tasks, can somebody else do it? So that's why they put delegate there. So it's something that, yeah, it's urgent. It has a super tight deadline. It goes beyond my capabilities, beyond my skill set, or it has nothing to do with anything that's important to me. Pass it on to someone else. And then if you're saying no to both urgent and important, obviously it's things that you can do at the absolute bottom of your list, or are they things you should even be doing? So that's another way of approaching tasks in front of you, and how you could set a priority would be with this Eisenhower matrix. Okay, I think there's procrastination and multitasking left. So I don't know who else can self-identify, but I procrastinate. I think we all do, depending on the task. So different reasons why we procrastinate is the fact that we're trying to reach for perfection. And the fact that either in your mind, it's never going to be perfect. So why even, I'm not going to touch that because I can't ever reach that ideal in our mind. Not saying that it has to, or like your boss or your professor asks for perfection. Normally that's something that we have that's very subjective to us. But that's one reason why we potentially push something, push it back, ignore it, do it at the last possible minute, because it's like, why even start? I'm never going to be good enough. Fear of personal limitations is like, well, this is so beyond anything that I'm capable of doing. So, and that, again, what's the point? Why should I do this? So these are reasons. Sometimes we're aware of them, and sometimes it's just, I'm having a super lazy day and I don't want to do it. That's also a reason why people procrastinate. But sometimes it goes a little bit further than that. Sometimes it's because I have no idea what I'm doing, or I do not know what the next step is. Like I'm so overwhelmed or confused, I don't even know where to begin. So recognizing that that's the reason why you're putting off this task is the first step in being able to start it. Because obviously, like, you don't even know where you're headed, well, you need clarification from somebody, whether it's your boss or whoever's involved. So we'll push it back, like, oh, I'll figure that out next time, because you don't even know where to begin. So I think that resonates a lot with students because they're like, our prof assigned us this. They're like, well, either you see that it's due at the end of the semester, it's like, I don't have to start that anytime soon, or you don't know how to start it. So in your mind, you've already it's gone. And then, like I said, a running theme of the semester is the fact that it is too overwhelming because there's too many, you're trying to take on too much at once. So sometimes what happens, or what will help alleviate a little bit of that and maybe get you started, is to break something up. So again, if I don't know why I keep using the example of an essay, but that's what's coming to mind. If you, in your mind, tell yourself, I have to write an entire essay start to finish, well, I'm not going to want to do that either. But if you tell yourself, okay, well, I just have to do the intro today, or I'm just going to work on my research today. Well, that seems a little less, a little more manageable than trying to tackle the whole thing at once. So that's potentially another reason why you procrastinate. I don't know if you noticed, this was a link to a TED Talk. So Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator, that's a little image that he put on the screen in the TED Talk. I found it super interesting. Especially if you're in the mood to procrastinate, why not procrastinate with a video about procrastination? So if you feel like it, I think most of the TED Talks, I try and find the ones that are like 15, maybe 20 minutes max. I know that most people get distracted with more than that. So I think he's about at like the 15-minute mark-ish. So I think it's a really interesting point of view, and he identifies as someone who procrastinates. So I think it's worth, even if you're just putting on in the background, to watch this. I can't remember, he calls it the gratification monkey, and I can't remember the other word he uses. But there's some really cool analogies in there, and if you are so inclined to kind of figure out a little bit, he goes a little bit into how your brain works. So it's pretty interesting. But these are some of the most common reasons why we procrastinate, not including the fact that it's just you don't feel like it, or it's just not a task that you're not invested or interested in it. Those will play into not wanting to do something as well. So it's just recognizing that, yes, I recognize that I procrastinate about a particular type of task. Like I don't like procrastinate across the board necessarily, but if certain things come about, I know myself enough to know that, oh yeah, that's going to get done the night before. But that's just who I am. So those are things that you need to account for when you're planning your time. And when people are like, oh yeah, do you have a good system? Sure, I do. So it's just that self-awareness of everything that's involved in time management and why you potentially procrastinate. So some of the strategies, which you guys have on the slide, because this one didn't change. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. It's really making sure your goals are reasonable, make them SMART goals if they're not already SMART goals. That's going to help. The whole idea of breaking larger tasks into smaller steps. Some students, it's the fact that we're already looking towards the finish line, and going back to like the perfectionism and all of those things. So it's just worry about the next 5 minutes versus the whole rest of your day. And then that whole piece about, I don't even know where to begin, make sure that you're asking for help or clarification. Rewards work really well for a lot of people. So there's the internal and external, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So the fact that at first, at least, you need to like dangle a carrot in front of yourself and be like, okay, if I get this done, what's my reward? I always use the example of a cookie because that's how I'm not going to say train. That's how my niece is getting used to things. She gets a cookie when she does something that she's supposed to do. So you plan a reward, or maybe it's, a YouTube video, or I don't know, you get up and you go for a walk, or whatever motivates you enough to get from start to finish. Plan a reward if you have to, because the goal is that's an extrinsic or external motivation because you need external help. The hope is that eventually you're going to self-motivate. And that would be more an intrinsic motivation. So the reward system helps a lot of people, and either it will become or like transform itself into something that's more self-motivation. And then other people just, once the reward is gone, they'll never do it. So it kind of depends on who you are. There's no right or wrong way to go about it, but just I have no problems with you finding rewards that are going to motivate you to get things done. So keep that in mind as a potential strategy, not the only one. All right, so I think there's like 3 more slides. The rest of it, I know I talked again. Remember the first couple of weeks were like a lot of me talking at you. But this is so that you're able to, the goal tonight, I'll get to it. But yeah, I know I talked at you a lot, but it's all of these things should be now in your head and in the back of your mind when you're sitting down to manage your time and create a schedule. So something else is to figure out what distracts you. So the example was when you sit down in a classroom, don't sit next to a window if you know it's going to distract you. Don't sit next to a door if all you do is watch people walking in and out of the hallway. I know that working from home, there's like people who say sit in front of a window and other people say don't sit in front of the window. Oh my God, the minute like a leaf can blow and it distracts me because my window is right there. So I know that visual stimuli is really what distracts me, apart from the dog who looks dead right now. But just get a sense of what distracts you. So some of the time management apps that I suggested have I don't remember what the official term is, but they have blocks. So the fact that you know that you wander, you can set yourself internet blocks so that you can't search for things while you're doing other tasks. So that's when we're working on the computer, YouTube is a big, or social media and YouTube are big distractions for a lot of people. So know that and potentially plan for ways to kind of counter that, but they can be like in your environment as well. So some students know that they need a quiet area. Other students like loud noise. So just know what distracts you and try not to put yourself in those situations if you can. Set boundaries. So whether or not it's like, we have a system at work that like, if I put not available, out of office, don't talk to me. I need this time to get my work done. So set boundaries for yourself, like, but also make other people aware of it. So it's like, hey, your roommates aren't allowed to come near you for this amount of time. You have to study, whatever the case may be. Those external, not necessarily distractions, but everything that you can control, set the boundaries to be able to control them. So even just the fact that you're turning off your phone because it's study time. So all of those things, set those boundaries and let the people around you know that, no, this is the time that I need for this. And then I'll talk to you when I'm done. So call me at this time or I'll chat with you then. So set those boundaries to be able to use your time more effectively. And then going back to the whole, you're allowed to say no. So it's not like a yes or no question. It's not a question of yes or no. It's let me get back to you is like the answer that you should have. Can you do this? Are you available here? Let me check and I'll get back to you, instead of immediately saying yes. Or for some people who don't really want to be with others, they immediately say no. Whatever the case may be, maybe think before you agree. So I like the standard reply is let me get back to you. I have to double check, which is how I live my life. Because like I said, I have stuff in all different kinds of calendars and I never know where I'm supposed to be. So just that's okay to do that and say that. Be realistic. So that goes back to the whole, how much time it takes you. Do you know what you're like? Just be real with yourself when you're planning your time, and it will like save you in the long run. So the last piece, sorry, again, I talked at for a very long time. Are there any questions, comments about anything that I mentioned in the last, gosh, I just talked for like 30 minutes straight. Are we good? Anything to add? Any comments, questions, concerns? I don't think I missed anything in the chat tonight. Good to go. All right, so I wanted to end with, I think it's the myth of multitasking is what the picture says. So it's the fact that, and this is, I'm sure there's research that can contradict this as well, but some of the research that I had read said that when people tell you they're a multitasker, they're not really multitasking. So the fact that maybe you're listening to a class lecture right now and you're also, I mean, I don't know that you have a lot of homework right now, and maybe you're doing 3 things at once. So the research shows that are you actually 100% effective in every single task that you're doing at the same time? So I'm multitasking and I do it all the time. Like I'll read a book, or I used to study in front of the TV. It's like, yeah, okay, but could you actually give me a good summary of the TV show that you watched in the background while you read the book? And could you also summarize everything that you read in the book? So the chances are you're going to miss stuff from either one. I mean, maybe you are the, exception to the rule, but for the most part, when we think of multitasking, what's really happening is we're switch tasking is what the research was telling me, is the fact that, I'm 100% effective in all 3 of those tasks. Well, really, you've been continuously switching between all 3 tasks, and your focus can only be on one thing at a time. So even though you think you're giving 100% to all 3, really you gave the TV, let's say 50%, you gave reading 30%, and then there was another 20% of you just getting distracted by everything else around you. So it's just being aware of the fact that the more that you accomplish, are you as effective in every single thing that you do? So that's what the second diagram is for every task that you add to this thing, what you're doing at the same time, the quality of your work and the effectiveness of the task reduces every time you add a task. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're like, I'm totally able to do all of these things at once. It's not a question of you can get everything done, you can accomplish all of the tasks. It's just, did you put everything you had into writing the essay while you were also listening to a podcast and, I don't know, answering an email? So the chance is there's potential for you not having given you didn't give 100% to all 3 tasks, and you want to try and avoid the fact that something, specifically right now, that your academics are going to suffer because you're able to do everything at once because you multitask. So it's just like closing thoughts, whether or not you actually are multitasking and whether or not you could like legitimately say, I gave everything I had to everything, and I'm super proud of everything that I did. I did my absolute best with all the tasks I had in front of me. Maybe, but the chances are something suffered maybe a little bit. And whether or not you can give me a synopsis of a TV show, obviously, who cares? If that's just there as like background noise, that's different than, you have to watch a movie for you were assigned a movie for a course. That's an actual assignment, and you're also doing a lab report, let's say, while you're going to miss something for either of those tasks. So it's just something to think about. That was my major moment of when I was doing research on time management, was the fact that multitasking versus switch tasking. I lean a little bit more towards the fact that we're switch tasking. So really, all that I threw at you tonight was, like I said, for the ultimate goal of trying to find a way to keep track of your activities, your goals, your priorities. I assume for this term, I assume a goal for everyone is, how am I going to keep track and manage everything? And basically it's to create a plan, a schedule, a list, or like a combination of everything, or a combination of a few different things that I've said tonight to be able to manage your time. So it's not a requirement to do so, but every year I offer that students who are struggling or just want like a second set of eyes, you're welcome to submit, just like I said with the mission statement drafts, you're welcome to submit like whatever timetable or schedule you tried to create. And I'm more than happy to give you some like general pointers, or maybe did you consider this, or maybe try adding some time here. I'm here if you want to go over a schedule for you. And like, this is what I did. Again, I'm old school with my paper formats, but I used to do something like this. And then like I merged everything and I made everything color coded. So whatever strategy or strategies that you use, if you'd like to run them by me or like have a quick discussion about something related to a timetable schedule, I'm happy to do that. Like at the end of a class, we schedule some time, or we can just like communicate via email. So that's the end goal. Like I said on Tuesday was this: figure out a way or ways to manage your time. And I'm here if you want to bounce some ideas off of me or kind of get the feedback of whatever you tried. All right. Okay, so I'm going to try one more time. So before we go, there's Kimini and Sharmar. Are you both present?
Yes.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Do you have access to your camera?
Yes, I do.
Would you mind, can we see you at least once? Everyone, I know there's a lot of black screens right now, but we've all seen each other, oh my God, 2 weeks ago. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I promise everyone else was put on the spot last week. So how do I pronounce your name?
Ekemini.
All right, and you're in what program?
Health promotion.
Oh, okay. I don't think I had any other health. I don't think. Well, welcome. Hi. Thank you. It's really nice to see you. So yeah, in case you're not aware, there are. Oh, where'd she go? Everything goes on D2L. For those who kind of missed last week, everything is on D2L. So double check it all. If you're having any questions, let me know. All right. So thank you. Hi and bye for Kimini. And then Sharmar. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. You sound super impressed.
Pardon?
You sound super impressed that I asked to see you.
Oh, no. Sorry. I'll tell you something a little bit about myself.
Sure.
I play on the Laurentian men's basketball team.
Okay, is that just this year? Have you been on the team a while?
Just started this year.
So how does that work during a pandemic?
So for the first part before we went back home, we had the gym time available to us, and that was after we did testing. Everybody was cleared for COVID. Nobody had any problems. It was a very minimum amount of cases back then, and then now, as we're on the uprising and lockdowns happening, they're really setting back that the gym's going to be closed and stuff like that. So now they say come back and wait it out and see what happens. Probably till like February 11th. They were hoping for the 25th of like next week, but then it's not progressing to get better. So now
is the hope to just maybe get back into the gym and train? Are you is the season done at this point?
There's no season for this year.
That's how much I've paid attention.
For this year and the semester that passed. Yeah, the semester that passed. So the upcoming semester, we're hoping that we may get cleared and stuff like that. Probably they may have some vaccine requirement, but other than that.
Well, that really sucks for you.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just at home hoping for the best that, we get better and just getting through school in the meantime as well.
Wow. All right. Well, welcome. Oh, what program are you in?
I'm trying to get into mechanical engineering. Right now I'm doing.
Oh, okay. Are you taking like a general, like the pre-engineering year?
Yeah, prerequisites for this.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome. Okay, that was it for putting you two on the spot. So like I said, I'm here if anyone wants to ask me anything before you log off. Otherwise, happy weekend, everyone, and happy Friday Eve. Friday Eve. All right, I will see you Tuesday. Good night.